Okay.
All right. Welcome to the May Curriculum Committee meeting. In accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health and welfare and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency, as enacted to read Section G, TAC 11, MRSA 403, TAC Alpha, public proceedings through remote access during declaration of the state of emergency to COVID-19 and for 30 days following the termination of that state of emergency. The Curriculum Committee meeting will be held through Google Meet. What I'd like to do right now is take the opportunity to let everybody introduce themselves, starting with committee members. My name is Matt Marshall. I represent Gardner. I'm the committee chair. Veronica?
Veronica Babcock. I represent Gardner as well.
Nancy?
Portia Brown. I represent Randolph.
Becky? Becky, you there? I thought she was. Okay. The staff, Pat?
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent of Schools.
Back to the committee member. Teresa, you just joined us? Teresa, you on mute?
Yes, I am.
Could you introduce yourself?
I'm Teresa Garrett, representing the town of Pittston.
Wonderful.
And I couldn't find my invite. That's why I'm late.
It's okay. Chad?
Hi, Chad Kempton, high school principal.
Am I missing anyone? Oh, Angela. Sorry, Angela.
Hi, Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Okay. I don't think I missed anybody. So we have a number of things on the agenda for this afternoon. The first thing up is something that we added late. It was a requirement policy. We're going to discuss top 10 student recognition. And I appreciate, and I know I can speak for hopefully my fellow board members, that the feedback we received via email and some of the things that was spoken about on social media was very appreciative and always very helpful for us to go back and reevaluate and potentially make changes or leave things as they are. So that's what we're attempting to do this evening. And I think we could hopefully come up with some resolution to make everybody hopefully a little bit happier. I think the curriculum committee can come up with a solution to potentially present to the full board tomorrow evening. Some of you know, and some of you don't know that we've scheduled an emergency school board meeting for tomorrow evening at 5:30 to discuss the topic. And I hope before we're done here this evening, I plan on trying to make a motion, or I'd ask somebody to make a motion to take a vote as to how we want to proceed and move it forward to the school board tomorrow evening for consideration and final approval. So I personally think that this is something that we can work through. I have no issue supporting both plans moving in parallel, recognizing the top 10 students and Latin honors folks at the same time. All of them are usually one and the same, but there'll be actually more students recognized if we move down that particular path. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. But what I would like to do is turn it over to Chad and have Chad, if you could briefly explain kind of what we did last year and why, and kind of how we got here and where we're at, and maybe give us some insight as to whether you think the recommendation that I just mentioned might work or might not. So Chad?
Yep. I'll start off by saying that I've had several conversations with several of my seniors. They have done a very good job of communicating with me. I had one of the top 10 seniors reached out to me in an email asking to get some clarification. So I went to their English class, where a number of them have AP English, and we had a conversation about a little bit about the history of where this came from, and I gathered some feedback from them from their viewpoint, which I thought was beneficial. And then I asked the group to, where this was a board policy, to write a letter to myself and then I would forward that on to Superintendent Hopkins, who I told him would definitely re-forward that on to you folks. And so they have done that. And I actually just got done reading some of their letters that were sent to us just today. And so my thought process on this, and I said this to Pat, is that having one or the other, I don't think is, based on what I'm feeling right now, is not sufficient, in that if we stay with the Latin honor system, then the top 10 students, the recognition in that sense is shortchanged or shortchanges those kids. And if we were to do the opposite and eliminate the Latin honor system, it would have the same impact on the kids that the Latin honor system recognizes. So when we first started this process and we introduced the Latin honor system to a recognition, it was originally to replace Gardner Scholars. And Gardner Scholars was a local thing, and we switched it over, or at least I wanted to switch it over to the Latin honor system because it's much more widely known and recognized because it's used at the collegiate level. And it's based on a straight number and not on the number of people. There's not a finite number of people that can kind of be in the club, so to speak. So if you earn the right, you get the right, versus if you earn the right and you're within a certain number of people, then you're recognized. And one of the challenges that we've had, some people have had with the top 10, is that when you get to 11 and 12, sometimes it's 100th and even downwards to 1,000th of a point between being recognized and not. And the black and white folks, the very cut and dry people, said that is what it is. And it truly, in some of the arenas that I operate in, yes, that is what it is. The Latin honor system, if you earn a 90 to a 92.99, you graduate with honors cum laude. It can be 1 or it can be 100. And it's a common benchmark. So 2 different approaches, both designed to recognize our kids for doing outstanding work. And so we started out with a dual platform, and that way both were in place for last year, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, but for the year before that. And then this year it was transitioned over to just being the Latin honor system with the valedictorian, salutatorian. I'm not one to make mistakes. I'm not one to make excuses, so I'm just going to say that it was not communicated as well as it could have been. And it's put us in this position where I am in favor of retracting or taking a step back and reinstituting the dual platform where we recognize both. And I think that's a win for everybody. Everybody is recognized for their accomplishments at a very high level. I don't think I know nobody is hurt by it. Several kids will be recognized in both arenas. Well, 10 of them will be. I think there are 4 kids at the summa cum laude level, which is the 97 to and above. There are 15 at the 93 to 96.99, which is the magna cum laude. And I believe there are 22 at the cum laude level, which is 90 to 92.99. So as a celebration, there's a number of kids that have trudged through a lot of challenges with this pandemic and hung tight and done very well. So that's something to be celebrated. And then for the kids that are in the top 10, that's a traditional recognition that we've had for a number of years, and it's worthy of recognizing the kids. We do We're working on cords for our Latin honor tiers so that the cum laudes would be, right now what we're thinking is an orange and white rope. The magna cum laude would be a black and orange, and then the summa cum laude would be all three colors in the honor cords. And then the top 10 have the top 10 white stoles, along with the top 10 medallions that we have traditionally given out with that recognition, including the valedictorian and salutatorian.
Chad, real quick question. Sorry to interrupt. The top 10, will they be recognized in the local newspaper as well, like a lot of the other high schools?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you. Are you all set, Chad? Do you have anything more to say?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go right ahead.
So why was the change made to begin with? What were the benefits? What was the thought process of that? Just wondering, because this system has been going on forever. The students are still in high school. This is what they've worked for. So I'm just wondering why it was ever changed. What was the reasoning? What was the benefit of changing it? My stepson was number 3 in his class, missed it by like an eighth of a point. So it is what it is. He was number 3. You got to live with what, I don't know. I'm just wondering why it's been changed. That's all. If you could tell me.
Well, you can look at it in two different ways. You can look at it as a competition, or you can look at it as academic achievement. And the top 10 brings more of a competition into it, and that suits some people fine. I've seen that competition destroy relationships and friendships amongst the kids because they're vying for number 1 or number 2 or number 10 versus number 11. And I've seen relationships ruined, quite honestly, where kids that were best friends as freshmen absolutely hated each other, and their sole purpose in their coursework was to get a higher grade than the others so that they would beat out their former friend, which is unhealthy. And obviously we've had hundreds of kids go through that wasn't the case. And so I'm not saying that is something that is saturating the system, but it is something that is present. And sometimes people lose sight of the fact that this is about academics and academic achievement, and the Latin honor system eliminates that competition other than the competition with yourself to achieve at a high level. So, and the high level is all, there's 10 of us here. All of us could reach that highest level of summa cum laude if we put the time and effort and have the success that we hope to have. And we would all be deserving of that versus one of us being deserving and the others coming down the line at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever. So it's just it's a little bit different philosophy, but they're both designed to recognize students for high achievement.
Hey, Chad, there was some consideration. The change there was some consideration for COVID too, right? I mean, I think there was some issues with class day and graduation and the amount of time people were together. And, when you add things to certain types of celebrations, it just adds time and could possibly create a problem. But, I'm totally in agreement. Like I said before, I think we can do both in parallel. It recognizes everybody as best as we can. And, young adults, you only graduate from high school once, so you might as well enjoy it and be proud of yourself. So,
and I don't think any of us want.
Question.
I don't think any of us want any of our graduates walking away feeling unappreciated, unrespected, having a negative twist over something that putting that back in doesn't hurt anybody to put the top 10 back in. It's not going to take away from something else by having reverting back to the dual system. So, if it was a situation where it was going to hurt Group A but not Group B, and then you switch and it reverses course, then there's no win there. But this doesn't do that. So,
Veronica, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement. I don't know if this is the right place, but first of all, I want to thank the students who commented, sent us emails. They were very well written. They were helpful in trying to help us solve a problem. I also think it's important that the community knows that we made a decision based on what the professionals, Chad, came to us with last year at the time. Like, that decision was not made to penalize students, to give everybody a participation trophy, but it was more, like Chad explained, to move towards that college-based Latin honors system. It's just really disheartening to listen to people in our community say things when they don't really understand the whole scope of what goes into making decisions. And I appreciate the students. I want to make sure that every student that has worked hard to achieve their goals is honored through the top 10 system, through the Latin cum laude system. And I appreciate the way that they approached the board and the administration with trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point, Veronica. I think that we as a school board and all the staff want the students to get recognized for everything that they've done throughout not just the 4 years here at the high school, but throughout their entire career as students. So, and people also need to understand that there are laws and policies that we have in place that we have to follow. And this is an example of that working, right? We have a meeting, we discuss it, we vote on it, we put it to the board for a decision tomorrow evening, and hopefully, hopefully the board will, the remaining members of the board will agree with our recommendation if we in fact give it a thumbs up. But yeah, the negativity sometimes is disheartening, but that's just the nature of the beast, I suppose, and we all work through it because we're mature adults. So. In saying that, Pat, did you have anything you wanted to talk about, or Angela or Becky?
Yes, I have just a question for this committee. So as you prepare to make a motion, I'm not clear. Are you preparing to make a motion to do the dual system for this year only, and then go back as a board and kind of rethink and reassess your policy? Or am I hearing you say that you're making a recommendation to change basically the policy to always have a dual system moving forward?
I think personally, I think that, I don't know if we can do that as a curriculum committee, because that's a policy committee issue, right? So I think, or maybe I'm wrong, Pat, I'm not sure.
Well, it is a policy, but it was a decision made by the board. So you certainly can make that recommendation to the board that it always be a dual process from this point forward, or because it's in policy that it is the cum laude system, that you just make a decision now to get through for graduation, and you address it now, and then you more after graduation spend a little more time weighing the options and thinking about it. Either is fine. I just think if you're going to make a motion, it's really, we need to be clear as to what you're saying.
Well, okay, I would recommend we make a motion. I know we can just, Alyssa, you had your hand up?
I didn't want to cut you off, Matt. No worries.
No.
I think
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, my thought process was I kind of went back and did my homework. You all know how I feel about data and going to see where we went, right? So that's what I went back to, the meeting from a year ago and the policy itself, and back to the date and such. And that brought me to the handbook, which had the mention of the top 10. And I believe when we discussed it a year ago, it was a practice and it wasn't in policy. So I would agree with Pat that we need to be clear that if we're going to put it in policy, we say it as such. This is a dual approach. I really like what you said, Chad. It doesn't hurt anyone, it adds. I think that's a great way to say this. And And I agree with Veronica as well, that a lot of the students put in their effort and use their good, background in schooling to reach out to us and give us good information. So I appreciate that. I think it also is true that we have a lot of community conversation and things that happen, and we do our work as a board when we're at a meeting like this. So I appreciate being able to listen in today and tomorrow, but that's where I came from and just researching and understanding. So as a policy committee member, I would appreciate that, Matt, to say that we put it in there and then we've all seen it. And I think that's a good approach. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so is this appropriate for me at this point to make a motion?
I think so.
I think
Okay.
so.
So I'd like to make a motion that moving forward from now until the end of time, we recognize the Latin honor system and top 10 recognition students every year moving forward. Is there a second?
I would second that, Matt. This is Nicole.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion before we vote?
Can I ask a quick question? So you'll still have the top 10 and then you'll do the Latin policy as well?
Yes,
Is that
moving
right?
Forward. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Matt?
So is it appropriate for Angela to call the roll?
Okay. I'm going to go in order of this participation list because I don't have the formal one in front of me. So Becky Fless,
Yes.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
Matt Marshall,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Nicole Medor,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
and Veronica Babcock.
Yay.
Okay, it is unanimous.
Great. So I just wanted to point out one thing. Tomorrow evening, for those folks that are listening or going to view this live stream later, there's an emergency school board meeting tomorrow scheduled at 5:30. You're welcome to join us. I think at that point there'll be some public comment opportunities. So I hope that folks show up and there's some solid discussion. And I think those of you that were here wanting to listen to this portion, this particular agenda item, if you're not interested in the rest of the curriculum committee meeting, you can fall off if you like, but we've got a few other things that we need to talk about before we adjourn. So, Angela, I'll kick it over to you to get started.
Could I
Oh.
just clarify something? For tomorrow night, the board has received a number of emails. So the structure for tomorrow night is that those emails will be read publicly. So members of the public who are watching via live stream will be able to hear what was said. And then this committee, the motion that you just made, will be put in front of the board as a recommendation. And then that's what will be discussed. Okay.
All right, Angela, over to you.
Okay.
Good night, folks.
Bye.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Our next item on the agenda is the final recommendation from the curriculum committee to this committee. No, final recommendation from the school level English Language Arts Curriculum Review Committee to the board level curriculum committee in hopes that you will approve the recommended ELA instructional materials for adoption across kindergarten to 8th grade. So we have gone through a pretty significant process. I've been sharing that process with you all along. And I have a little slideshow for you, especially in case people are watching, to just show you what the programs are and then seek recommendation from you, hopefully, by the time we're done this conversation. Sound good? I just need a minute because I realize it's sitting on one computer. And of course, as usual, the computer I need it on is this one. So I just need to quickly pull up the title so it's on the right computer. There we go. Okay. Tab. Share. I'll give it a second. You should all be seeing the cover page now, right? I see no faces. I hear no voices. Yes, we're good.
Yes.
Thank you, Veronica. Okay. So we have selected 2 programs, one to make recommendations to you, one for K-5 and one for 6-8. Our goal was to actually bring 2 recommendations forward, weighted with analysis, and have you weigh in. But what we soon learned, or quickly learned, is that after our significant analysis, only one program at each level actually rated highest across our criteria. And so the results were unanimous as to which programs they wanted to bring forward to this committee. So at the K-5 level, we'd like to use collaborative classroom, their literacy collection, which includes being a reader, making meaning, being a writer, and book clubs. And I'll explain what this all is. And as you know, that we closely reviewed 4 programs, well, 5 at the middle school level, that met our broad objectives, as well as affordability and professional learning requirements. We used a detailed rubric, which I shared with you at a prior curriculum committee meeting, that followed the strands here. We were looking for text quality and complexity, foundational skills, speaking and listening, writing, and instructional supports and inclusiveness strategies. So this program was the one that was unanimous as the strongest program, despite the fact that all programs moving forward went through an initial review by me on our shared vision of teaching and learning to make sure those aspects were integrated into the program and fell within our affordability category. So in K2, we would like to bring forward making meaning and being a writer. We plan on bringing forward being a reader, which will start in 2nd grade and then work itself down to kindergarten and 1st grade, and I'll explain why. So because our system has adopted a synthetic phonics program called Jolly Phonics, we have a really strong head start now in our kind of systematic approach to foundational skills. It's not complete, but we have a strong head start. And when we looked at being a reader, the one element that was a challenge for us is that it's not a sounds first approach to phonics instruction, which is fine. It's another evidence-based approach. But because we've committed 2 years to a sounds first approach that's showing promise in terms of our data, we want to gradually bring in being a reader, because we'll have to do some work in a curriculum crosswalk so that teachers know what they don't have to use in the program in order to use Jolly Phonics. And so in the meantime, making meaning at the K1 and 2 levels is part of being a reader. So they will have a comprehensive, cohesive literacy program. And then when we slowly add the elements of being a reader in that we want to add in, it will allow for greater choice for both teachers and students on text selection. And you'll see why that matters in a moment. Being a writer, we currently use the Lucy Calkins units of study for writing. We have not purchased updated units of study for writing in a long time. It's a program that really requires at least 40 hours of professional learning to implement successfully. And this district, when it but it supported 4 hours of professional learning. So it's not something that teachers are thrilled with. There's a few who've come from other areas who've had the extensive training that that understand the nuances of the program. It's a really challenging writing piece, and it doesn't attend to language usage skills as effectively as we would like. And our data suggests that that's an area we want to work on. However, our committee over time recognizes that we want to teach language usage in concert with reading and writing practices and not in isolation. And so we wanted to find a instructional resource that allows that really authentic applied learning process, but still allows for systematic instruction so that we don't miss things along the way. And we feel like this being a writer program really does do that. Teachers were quite pleased with it. At the 3-5 level, it's the same collaborative classroom. It's just oriented slightly differently. It has making meaning, which couples with what we call book clubs, which supports some differentiated small group instruction. And it's important that we do both book clubs and making meaning to meet our objectives. And then being a writer would carry forward through grades 3 through 5, and we'd carry forward Jolly Grammar, which just, again, enhances word study mostly. We would provide training through Collaborative Classroom, as well as our job embedded K-5 literacy coaches. Teachers and students would receive print materials. There's actually digital access licenses as well that are included for the teachers. We would ensure that every classroom had text sets, so that's for shared reading, and classroom libraries that support independent reading that align with the program's objectives. Our district we have no history of buying and supporting classroom libraries. Teachers kind of develop those on their own. So a brand new teacher can come in and basically hope for scholastic points to build up their library. And this would ensure that every student in our district, no matter who their teacher is, has access to high quality texts that support their ongoing learning at the independent level and are just right for them as a reader. We would still support the online Lexia program at the early levels for some independent support and differentiated support for students. And there is one license that's still under review. We're trying to see if it's really necessary with this program. Some strengths of this is it's very student-centered approach. There's significant scaffolding and differentiation to allow all students, no matter what kind of struggling experiences they've had, will have access to core content and curriculum. And there are supports built in to enable that kind of on-ramp into grade level learning. And we know that in order for our achievement of students who are struggling to reach their grade level objectives, they need to both have access to core content alongside their peers and targeted supports that occur outside of their core content learning. And this program will enable that to happen. It will support, as long as our schedule continues to develop to enable that. This program is really strong in critical thinking skills. And it embeds a social emotional learning thread in all of its work. The classroom practices, routines, the language that's used, the feedback loops, embed research around the CASEL research around social emotional learning. And it's aligned really nicely. We did a check. It's aligned really nicely with the language and expectations of Second Step, which is our social and emotional learning program that supports a K-5. So there is a nice synergy. So students will have that language and expectations really mirrored all day long in their learning journey, which we feel is a real strength of this program. We do always vet everything against independent research entities. And so I wanted to be entirely transparent. One of those is Ed Reports. On Ed Reports, Collaborative Classroom is in the K to 2 levels, is really high on text quality, that's green, and in building knowledge is orange. And the reason for that is that Ed Reports has written out their criteria as such that there's an expectation that students will learn content knowledge like social studies and science content knowledge through literacy. And that does actually happen in collaborative classroom, but it's not the forefront because they design their program with the understanding that social studies and science would still be taught in an elementary classroom and have its own unique scope and sequence, and that they would apply lessons learned about navigating literature and informational texts within those science and social studies arenas. And that is actually the approach we're taking in our district as well. So there, while the score is a little bit lower, it's okay for us because we already built in time for that additional access to content knowledge. And that's written up on the Ed Report site. This, in grades 3 through 5, it scores a little lower in text quality, and that's because of the approach to making meaning being a lot of shared and mentor texts. And so there isn't enough differentiation of texts at those levels, which is why we actually, as a district, wanted to recommend adding the book clubs element, which is not reviewed on Ed Reports. But by adding the book clubs, you get into that differentiated small group instruction and a much wider variety of texts, which elevates the text quality component of this report, which would move it to green. Additionally, all levels had scored a little bit lower because the Ed Reports believe that tasks should be culminating events. So like at the end of a unit of study, a number of weeks, you should have kind of this big project where you apply everything you know. And I do support that in terms of transfer of learning. And I did see evidence of that in collaborative classroom, except for instead of at the end, it's woven throughout. So it might be partially done partly through a unit and revisited at different times. And then we found evidence to support that actually in Ed Reports. The collaborative classroom Ed Reports is also designed to support individual over collective, which is important. But because we want all students to have access to core curriculum collectively and then differentiate for different levels to make sure all students continue to grow, collaborative classroom supports these shared and mentor texts with these protocols that allow for critical, rigorous thinking that we did not see evidenced in other programs. And by having that transparent, open thinking process in the classroom, it helps students build their skill set both in speaking and listening and in critical thinking, and it impacts the individual and the collective. But that's not the way Ed Reports writes their criteria. So I wanted to raise that as well. Oops, we're skipping this because those are videos that you probably don't need. So that's the K-5 one. And in writing, everything was highly proficient. It just doesn't show on that little snapshot. In the 6 through 8, so collaborative classroom only goes up to grade 6 anyway. And we didn't want to transition a program at the 6th to 7th grade level. We wanted to transition something kind of at that. We have a K-5 model across our district and then a 6-8 model. So we wanted to transition at that point. So the program that we're recommending is Amplify reading at the 6 through 8 level. Training would be provided by Amplify as well as our newly hired middle school literacy coach. We would have print and digital materials and text sets also. The strengths are its rigorous expectations and its varied instructional strategies that are offered for teachers, for students below, on and above grade level, and for English language learners. The scaffolding and differentiation is also very strong in Amplify. It does promote critical thinking. And this particular program does integrate content knowledge. So it has a 50-50 balance of informational text and literature, which is significant given our ongoing data. And what we found, which was really fascinating, is there's some alignment between the scope and sequence in science and social studies with this English program. And so students can have unique English classes and unique social studies or science classes, but find that some of that information actually crosses over and they can make those connections like in real life. And so instead of having these isolated experiences, they can have these coordinated experiences, but still remain in content area courses and not require teachers to have significant amounts of co-planning. There's just natural synergy in how the programs line up. So we were really thrilled about that. And there's a systematic word study built into the units of study. So again, our belief is that vocabulary based on research should not be taught in isolation. And this bridges that and builds it right into the fabric, but in a really systematic way, which is a need in our middle school. And this is their Ed Reports results. So they're all green. So I don't have a lot of qualifiers. At the upper level, there's another category, which is what you see, usability. And those are the two programs we're bringing forward for you to discuss.
So Angela, I have a quick question. How do the instructional materials K through 8 scale for virtual type learning if in fact we have issues later on in the fall?
Yeah, that's a great question. With Amplify, there's a digital platform. And so most of their text sets are actually both digital and hard copy. And the individual reading is digital and can be hard copy if student chooses to, but isn't required to. And they have like thousands of books in their library. So their digital library. So that's really interesting. And it works well with, I think, Google Classroom is what I remember. There can be some connections. At the K-5 level, what would happen there is the routines and procedures can be applied in virtual settings once we coach students how to do that in a virtual setting, just like any routine and procedure in any new year. What's nice about collaborative classroom is that it actually builds in. It doesn't start day one with like, okay, start learning this. It actually has a window to build in teaching of routines and procedures using a few shared experiences. Most programs don't build that window in. This program does, and it provides lots of videos of what it should look like and what it could look like. And then this year they added a lot of supports and videos on how to do this in a remote setting. So we would be able to draw from that professional library for our staff and help them move forward. And then using Seesaw would help us because some of the follow-up resources that students would use to apply their learning, either in a small group or individually, could be done on our Seesaw platform.
Are the teachers excited?
Yes, the question, they felt like when we did a feedback loop, they felt like it was a good fit for where we were headed, like where we are, where we're headed, the skills that they have, and what we want for kids, which I think is great. Our literacy and our curriculum teams were really pleased with both the supports and the expectations in the programs. And the challenge, and just to be honest, that teachers shared or their concerns is, will we get all the materials we actually need to do this? And will we really get the training we need? That is something that I've been working really hard for 2.5 years to help them recognize that if we're expecting something, we're going to offer the levels of support that they deserve to do well. But again, it's always proof is in the pudding, right? They're going to have to go through the experience in order to build that continue to build the trust and credibility. But it is absolutely my commitment to ensure that they have the materials and resources. I just had a conversation with Pat this afternoon because when I was running the numbers again, we may have an opportunity to buy sort of everything at once using the federal dollars and then not have to worry about it for like 6 years, besides a few trade books that don't, that get lost or wear out or whatever. We do some of those. And if we can't, I have a really reasonable plan to make sure every teacher still has what they need immediately. And then we just continue to build that out as they build their skill set. And that's a much more minimal impact still on my curriculum budget that shouldn't elevate the budget if we set it up appropriately over the years, as we do in cycles for most instructional programs. But I figured, if something doesn't come through on some of our federal plans, then we might be able to leverage a little bit more funds and kind of take care of it all at once.
Right. Teresa, you had a question?
Yes, hi, thanks. Thanks, Angela, for your work. I'm wondering, is this because I'm being optimistic that the kids will be back in school? So does this allow for any hands-on interaction with the teacher, or is it all going to be like an online thing again?
Oh, if we are all in person, Teresa, we will be in classrooms. There'll be small group discussions. There'll be
Awesome.
large group collaborative discussions. There's routines to teach teachers how to do that really effectively with this particular program that the teachers who engage in that found it really strong. It'll be more, I'll be honest, it'll be more fun if we're all in person to implement.
Great. And one more question. Are we bringing cursive back?
Yes, cursive is part of our instruction. And when we went through that, we did handwriting, cursive, and keyboarding earlier this year as a review as to when we should implement those, or we reviewed the timeline for instruction. And cursive is introduced in 3rd grade and reinforced in 4th grade and a little bit in 5th grade. But in 4th grade and 5th grade, we start introducing keyboarding as well, or we will start introducing keyboarding as well, and reinforce that in 6th grade.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Becky, you got your hand up.
I do. I'm wondering, so in 6 years, Angela, there'll be perhaps a need to replenish the program?
Well, potentially, yeah.
Potentially. So is that something that we can be planning for a little bit year by year? I don't know what the dollar sign would be, but is it something that set aside a little bit every year?
Yeah, exactly. So in this particular program, there's really no need to replenish. But I just know cycles in education usually require after a number of years to kind of relook at your materials. And so we have our ELA team on a 5-year cycle. So then that would mean in 6 years, we'd have to have this conversation. If in a few years we continue to still be happy with this program, we can absolutely plan that out and just do it gradually over time, like phase it in by grade level, which would be a much more conscientious financially approach to doing that kind of business. I will say Gorham School District in Maine has been using this program. They're really pleased with it. And Augusta schools have been, this is their 2nd or 3rd year. I think it's their 3rd year, but it's kind of hard because a year and a half of it has been virtual. And their teachers and their literacy coach is Paula Burke, who is connected to our district by living in our district. They actually met with our team, our K2 team, to talk through all of their experiences. And they were very enthusiastic, but they didn't need to be. They were.
They just are. Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you want to talk about Title I staffing? Or?
Can I have approval or not on this? So that's one charge of
We
Yeah.
have to make a motion.
Well, it's the chart.
Well, we
This
need
is
to-
actually written into your charge. It's approving instructional materials. So I just want to make sure it's official.
I make a motion, we accept the curriculum that Angela has presented for language arts.
I second that.
Okay, so I'll just, Veronica, I'm assuming if you make the motion, you're saying
Yes.
yay. And Teresa
Yay.
and Matt
Yay.
and Nicole
Yay.
and Becky.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the next item, Matt. I figured with the change in the agenda, we would be adjusting our conversations. So I'd rather allow you to end on time, and that is perfectly fine. I'll just, in a nutshell. Every year, we need to review our data and our enrollment and our free and reduced lunch rates and our ability to reach our school goals as written in our annual federal applications. It's called a comprehensive needs assessment, and we do it every year. When we do that, it's important for me to also review all of our academic achievement data, follow the 80-20 rule and look at our bottom 20% of students, and then calculate that based on where our highest free and reduced rate lunch is, look at our staffing in those areas and ensure our staffing is aligned to our student needs. In doing so, I may need to make some shifts with our Title I staffing in the buildings where shifts are allowed to be made. And that doesn't mean losing staff or cutting staff. It just means making sure staff are providing services where the greatest needs exist within our district. And so there is some opportunity to just make a couple adjustments. And I thought I would raise that to your attention since you review all of the federal dollars and applications. But we can, I can show you my charts and we can discuss this further in June.
I was on mute. Sounds good.
Okay, great. So that
Does
will,
anybody- anything else?
that's it for me. Anything else for anyone else?
Thank you,
Okay.
Angela, for your hard work.
Oh, thanks, my team. We have great teachers here who've worked really, really hard reviewing these programs and coming together and working with their staff. They brought everything to the staff meetings and shared. They were just very thorough and I appreciate them. Our next
very
meeting is June 8th.
Okay. I think 4:30 works.
That's the day of the school budget vote. Won't that be great?
Oh,
Maybe we should change that.
oh,
That's a long day after working.
We
so,
can go to the voting booth and vote.
so here's the, because here's the thing. If we change it to the 1st, it would be the hour before your budget hearing.
Right.
Oh,
And if we change it to the 15th, I won't have any teachers here.
Right. I was just
Here,
let me
mentioning
ask
it
you a
on that
question.
day. I wasn't mentioning it so that it would be changed. I was just mentioning it.
I guess it's fine. I
Angela,
mean,
what do you anticipate the agenda might be for that meeting?
Title I staffing, a draft end of year profile so that I can then submit my end of year reports to all the titles to the Department of Education. So I try to give you a draft or where the summary of where that stands so you can review that with draft goals and objectives for next year and social studies instructional resource, middle school.
So there are a number of things we need to get through then. Okay.
Our last
I was
one.
thinking that, right. Okay. Teresa, you had your hand up?
You're muted.
Teresa?
Sorry. Could we just move it to the following Tuesday, the 15th? Or will that give you enough time, Angela?
We can, technically we can. It just, it's the last staff day and they'll be done at like 3:30. I don't know if I'll need staff or not on that day.
Need to do it on a Tuesday? Can we do it like a Thursday for Wednesday afternoon? You know what I think would work? Would it be possible for you to look at the calendar and just propose a date and time, and then there's only 5 of us, we can chime in and.
I know for me, I have a lot of work meetings Wednesday and IEP meetings Tuesday, Thursday. That's sometimes why I can't even come on Tuesday and why I needed it a little later. So, I mean,
Are your work meetings in the late afternoon on Wednesday, Veronica?
yeah, they're like, it depends, depending on what the meeting is. Like I have one that night, the 9th from 3 to 4, but who knows if it will go just 4 and you know how that works. And I do have IEP meetings that Thursday, so.
Do you want me to send a poll out to the team, the curriculum committee team, and then we'll make a decision? For now, we'll post it as June 8th, and then if we send a poll, when I send the agenda out, I'll have the different time on it. Okay, that seems
That's
most
perfect.
efficient. Okay, and then I'll share the results with you, Matt, and we can make a decision.
Sorry to be a pain.
Okay, perfect.
It's fine. We all are living this life. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Enjoy the blue skies, everyone.